Hello. Let's talk about Ad Astra. Went and saw this last night and have some thoughts about it. Basically, Ad Astra is a story about an astronaut named Roy McBride, played by Brad Pitt, and his father is also an astronaut. His father is a very famous astronaut. It shows his picture. It's Tommy Lee Jones. His picture's up next to Buzz Aldrin and Neil Armstrong and these famous astronauts. This is set in the near future, and so he is supposed to be the first person who ever went to Jupiter, ever went to Saturn, and then left on a voyage for Neptune and never returned. And this happened when Brad Pitt's character Roy was young. His father went on this trip and never returned. And so we pick up the story where Brad Pitt aged. He's an adult, and he is kind of filled with turmoil and his inner demons. He's not a very well-adjusted adult because his father abandoned him, more or less, when he was young. And that's where it starts. So Brad Pitt is also an astronaut. Roy's an astronaut. And suddenly these electrical surges start hitting the Earth from outer space, and thousands of people are dying, and it's happening frequently, and no one knows why. And then Brad Pitt is sort of tasked with trying to fix this situation. He finds out that his father could still be alive, and that this surge situation could be related to what's going on. So that's kind of the setup, and it goes from there. So it ends up being a father-son story. It's a very moody sort of space story. So there's a lot of things borrowed or just reminiscent of previous space films. I couldn't help but think about the first scene of Gravity, because it opens with Brad Pitt in a harrowing situation. I love that movie Gravity from Alfonso Cuarón a few years ago, and it opens with a similar space crisis, I guess. And then there's a lot of similarities, I think, in tone and feeling to 2001: A Space Odyssey. But then a funny one is, so Liv Tyler plays Brad Pitt's ex-lover, we're not really sure, but he's up in space looking at her image on screens, and I couldn't help but think about Armageddon, because she plays a similar character in that. It's Liv Tyler's face that this astronaut who's trying to save the day is looking back at. So it does borrow a lot from previous movies, but it feels very original. That's not to say it's not an original film. It has a lot of really good things, I'll say. I didn't fully love it, and I'll get to that in a minute, but the world is very well realized. So it's the near future. So we have things like commercial space flight, and I won't go into details of how that plays out, because that's really a cool thing to see that happening. And you kind of realize slowly, oh wow, that's how this is all set up now. And this, it's supposed to be probably 5 to 10 years from current present day. That's my guess anyway. And the tone is really well done. The cinematography and the lighting are really great. There's some very stark blue lighting in some shots, some red lighting that's just really really beautifully done. It's a good movie to look at. It looks really, really nice. It's not very flashy cinematography, but there's some really great shots here. Probably my favorite thing about it is Brad Pitt. So I am someone who is kind of mixed on Brad Pitt. I feel like his early days, not that early days of, maybe early for me, some of the first things I saw him in were like the Ocean's movies and some of these more broad performances where I just always had a sense of, hey, I'm Brad Pitt and I'm being funny, like he's almost self-aware and full of himself is not the right way to say it, narcissistic, something like that. I'd always had that sense of like, here's Brad Pitt on screen playing whatever he's playing. And even in something like Inglourious Basterds, which I love, I don't love his performance in that. I mean, it's a big performance by design, but I feel like the last few things I've seen him in, it seems like he's trying to shed that persona. That's my own bias, I'm sure. But in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood and in this, there's a certain naturalism to what he's doing, certain unpretentiousness maybe, but this movie, he's really, really great in this movie. He really does ground it, because it's very elevated, it's stylistic, which I think that can tend to feel unrealistic unless it's grounded in some ways. And I think he grounds this really nicely. And it's kind of a subtle performance too. I think, yeah, it's not over the top, but it feels true and it feels real. Subtlety is not something that you'll find in the script of this. So that's my main issue with this movie, is the script kind of bangs you over the head with, here's the emotion of this scene, you know? And a lot of the way it does that is that there's narration, voiceover from Brad Pitt, who's, it's not as extreme as like something sad happens. Oh, I'm feeling very sad now. It's not that bad, but it's kind of akin to that it's just telling us how he's feeling all the time in a way that I think a better script could have, you know, show don't tell is the whole adage. I mean, it does cover a lot of ground, and so that would have made the movie a lot longer, probably, but I think I would have liked that better. It sets up, you know, yeah, he has these inner demons. It kind of sets up at the beginning, and the movie is about his journey of, it's not just how he's relating to his father and the complicated feelings he has for his father, but his internal struggles as well with not being a well-adjusted adult male, kind of. I think just that journey could have been told better, and that's the main thrust of the movie. So I feel like that's a pretty big issue for me. Because of that, and just in general, the writing, the writing of dialogue especially is just kind of clunky. There's some things in the plot that you think, you know, did he really have to do that? So for instance, you find this out in the beginning, he has to go to Mars for part of this journey to send a transmission, because that's the last outpost that humans have at this point in history or whatever, in the future. But I just was thinking, couldn't he just record this on Earth and send it? Like, why does he have to travel all the way out there? I mean, that's half of the movie almost, is him traveling to that post. So anyway, there's some like sci-fi things that this didn't, plot holes, I guess you'd call them. I can forgive that. I don't care so much about that. But the dialogue and the narration, the voiceover, I think really could have been tightened up a lot. And then kind of the ending, I don't want to spoil things, but the ending, that problem comes to the surface a lot for me. The dialogue and the ending just really felt heavy-handed, beating you over the head with the emotions that are happening, instead of just letting us intuit what's happening internally in Brad Pitt or in other characters. There's the climax of the movie, I think, because of all that, just really didn't land for me emotionally. It you know, it wasn't all that surprising what happens when I think on some level it wanted to be, and it just rang hollow. I didn't feel much for what was going on when that's what the movie wanted me to do, I think. And then the final, very, very ending, again, I'm not going to spoil anything, but has the same issue with, it's almost a level of, hey, in case you're not picking up on what I want you to feel, I'm going to have a character just say it out loud and tell you how to feel, more or less. And so that just kind of left me with a bad taste in my mouth at the end of it. And again, that's like the central thrust of the whole movie. Emotionally, just didn't work. So there's a lot of great things here. The set design, production design, the world building is really great. Cinematography is great. The music is really solid too. It's kind of unassuming, and there's not a lot of flashy musical numbers in it, but there's some moments that that's some nice music. So I think all of it very capably done. Just the script could have been tighter, a lot tighter. It could have been a better written film, and I think it would have worked a lot better. So if you love sci-fi, I think you'll really like this. If you like Brad Pitt, I think you'll really like this. Other than that, it's not a bad movie by any means. I enjoyed myself watching it for the most part. It just was not challenging at all, certainly emotionally, and just kind of, I felt it kind of was dumbed down so that, I'm not sure why, but it felt dumbed down to a level that did not, I left that a lot less satisfying than maybe similar movies would have done. So anyway, those are my thoughts.